Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. Today I want to talk about Japanese verbs and Japanese verb endings. But first I want to make a confession. I do these videos based on stuff that kind of crosses my mind for whatever reason. And I do them without an awful lot of planning because I find that when it comes to languages and language learning and talking about languages, spontaneity, randomness, is somehow more effective than too much systemization. All right, so I don't plan, like I have no terms to describe Japanese verbs. The reason I'm on the subject of Japanese verbs is that in a video that I made quite a while ago about Japanese, I said there are no verb endings to worry about in Japanese, and someone commented and said there are. And of course, when I think about it, that person is right. What I meant was that I have never consulted Japanese verb tables the way I have consulted verb tables for Spanish, Portuguese, even Russian, and so forth, because the verbs don't change for person. And there are limited, I shouldn't say that, they don't change for person. So there's not as many different possible endings as, for example, in the case of say, Russian for nouns and adjectives. There's not that tremendous variety of endings. So how do Japanese verbs work? And why is it that I never really looked upon them as having the same verb ending problems as these other languages? Mostly I just got used to Japanese because in Japanese, not only for verbs, but for adjectives and for nouns, stuff happens at the end that determines the function of that word. So if you say like kaku, is to write. So kakimasu is a more formal. So you've got kakimasu. If it's past tense, it's kakimashita. Okay, but again, it doesn't change for you, I, we, they, kakimashita. If it's we might write, is kaku daro. So it's kaku daro. If it's kakimashitara, okay? So you have these endings. If you get someone to write, is kakasareru. I find that I just got used to these things by seeing them in context. If I look at a table of these, there's no way I can remember them all. But if I see them in different contexts and then I question, like, why is this? And then eventually you start to get used to them. But, if you have like yasui, yasui is inexpensive, cheap. Yasui daro, like kaku daro, probably will write yasui, inexpensive, daro. Even nouns, これは本だろ、これは車でしょ、車だろ、kakuでしょ、安いでしょ. So that basically, I don't see them as sort of verb endings per se. I just see them as sort of suffixes or column endings that have meanings that are attached to verbs, nouns, whatever. And there's an unlimited number of them. And what's delightful in Japanese is you can say kaku daro, kakimashitara, kaitara, so that you can also, the kaku can sometimes become kaitara, kakimashitara, kaitara. Kaku naraba is another way of saying it, so that there's this variety. It seems to me in Japanese, there's 2 or 3 different ways of arriving at the same result. We can look at a table of these. In fact, it might be useful to get some kind of an overall comprehensive sense of how all this stuff works. But ultimately, you just have to expose yourself to enough of the language in meaningful context where you start to see these. I'm trying to think of some other naze naraba. Like naze naraba is because. Naze naraba, I don't know why, but the naraba is there again. In other words, you can say so deshitara, so de areba. I mean, there's just all kinds of ways in Japanese, and every language has sort of that almost sensual delight that we get in using it using the sort of idiosyncrasies of the language. And in the case of Japanese, it's playing with all these different things that get stacked onto the end of words to shape what we're trying to say, to put in a certain amount of, again, so typically Japanese, some hesitation and chance to think about what you're going to say. And those are the delights of the Japanese language. I don't see them as the same kind of problem as case endings in Russian or in the Slavic languages, where u could be this case for this gender, and it could be something else for some other gender, singular, plural, and it's this endless struggle to try and remember these very specific endings. Whereas in Japanese, you have these sort of functional suffixes, endings, that can be attached to verbs, adjectives, sometimes nouns, and you just kind of get used to them. But if you want to consult a list, by all means do so. So again, it's partly in response to this person who said, who corrected me when I said there are no verb endings in Japanese. In fact, there are, but to me, it's a different kind of animal, and just a perspective. And if this kind of chat about specific aspects of different languages is of interest, please let me know, and please let me know what aspects of which languages you would like to get my perspective on. So, thank you for listening. Bye for now.